It is exactly 2 in the afternoon in the suffocating humidity of the Carolina swamps, and your core body temperature has just crossed 102 degrees Fahrenheit. You are trapped inside a thick canvas ghillie suit, moving your body forward at an agonizing rate of 2 centimeters per minute. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now and ring the bell. We cover the stories the history books skip, so you don't want to miss what's coming next. I served nearly 20 years in the special operations community. I am not going to name names or list specific operations. A lot of that is in the past and some of it stays there. I came back with this body, some titanium hardware in my spine, and a military disability rating. Now this channel is my job. I share the reality of what it takes to survive in the worst conditions on Earth. I share what I know you watch, and that is the exchange. Today we are actively deconstructing the physiological and economic reality of the United States Marine Corps Scout Sniper Stalk. The civilian public often confuses camouflage with simply wearing patterned clothing and hiding behind a tree. The Department of Defense views the sniper stalk as an incredibly expensive, mathematically unforgiving industrial filter designed to evaluate a human body's mechanical tolerance to absolute physical and thermal destruction. The course exists exclusively to determine if a Marine can completely override their biological survival instincts to manipulate optical physics and defeat high-powered surveillance. The primary enemy during the stalk phase is not the instructor scanning the field, but rather the severe thermodynamic trap of the ghillie suit itself. A standard Marine Corps ghillie suit is constructed from a heavy canvas flight suit, covered in nylon netting and heavily tied with raw jute and local vegetation. This construction creates a massive biological insulation layer that completely prevents the evaporation of human sweat into the atmosphere. As the candidate drags their body across the ground, the internal temperature of the suit rapidly spikes to over 110 degrees Fahrenheit. When the ambient humidity reaches 90%, the human body loses its biological ability to execute convective cooling. The candidate begins to lose up to 2 liters of water per hour through continuous, ineffective sweating. Blood plasma volume drastically drops, forcing the heart to pump at an elevated, chaotic rate just to maintain basic organ function. The prefrontal cortex, starved of hydrated blood, begins to experience mild hallucinations and a severe degradation of logical processing. The foundational construction of the ghillie suit requires hours of meticulous, handcrafted engineering by the candidate before the stalk even begins. A properly constructed suit does not utilize generic manufactured camouflage patterns. The candidate must actively harvest natural vegetation from the specific operational environment, weaving local grasses, branches, and dead leaves into the thick nylon netting. This process requires a deep botanical understanding of how specific plants wilt and change color when disconnected from their root systems. To combat rapid botanical decay, candidates are forced to locate and utilize dead vegetation or highly resilient local brush that matches the ambient thermal and visual signature of the terrain. The instructors scanning the field are explicitly trained to look for biological anomalies, such as a green pine branch moving slowly through a field of tall brown grass. Furthermore, the thick jute fibers attached to the suit must be meticulously frayed and dragged through the mud to eliminate any unnatural geometric shine or synthetic texture. The final product is an incredibly dense, heavy biological matrix that physically transforms the human silhouette into a shapeless, organic mound of earth. While the body is actively cooking inside this matrix, the candidate must continuously navigate the unforgiving optical physics of camouflage. The instructors positioned in the observation post are not casually scanning the grass with their naked eyes. They are utilizing military-grade spotting scopes equipped with massive objective lenses that mathematically gather maximum ambient light. The optical resolution of these specific lenses allows an instructor to identify a broken shadow or a single unnatural geometric line from over 800 yards away. To survive this optical gauntlet, the the candidate must master the physical science of target indicators. The human eye is evolutionarily designed to detect specific anomalies, categorized mechanically as shape, shine, shadow, silhouette, spacing, and movement. A ghillie suit only masks the shape and the shine of the human form by blending the geometric lines into the natural background. The suit cannot mask a shadow, and it absolutely cannot mask the kinetic displacement of vegetation. The mathematical calculation of the stalk is a brutal economic exchange between time and risk. The candidate is given exactly 3 to 4 hours to cover a distance of roughly 1,000 yards. This equates to an agonizingly slow rate of physical movement, requiring the candidate to inch forward utilizing the skull drag technique. The skull drag forces the candidate to keep their face completely buried in the dirt, utilizing only the small stabilizing muscles of their toes and fingertips to pull their body weight forward. This specific biomechanical movement violently isolates the latissimus dorsi and the calf muscles, rapidly filling them with painful lactic acid. Because the candidate cannot raise their head to look around without instantly exposing their silhouette, they must navigate blindly for hours. They must mentally map the terrain during a brief observation phase, calculating the exact geometric azimuth to their final firing position before they ever drop into the grass. A deviation of just 2 degrees over 1,000 yards will mathematically force the candidate entirely out of the operational boundary, resulting in an automatic failure. The economic calculation of time versus risk during the stalk is a constant, agonizing mental negotiation. If the candidate moves too slowly and fails to reach the final firing position before the time expires, they receive a 0 for the entire evaluation. This strict temporal boundary prevents the candidate from simply lying perfectly still for the entire duration, forcing them to actively gamble their visual stealth against the ticking clock. The prefrontal cortex must continuously calculate whether the wind velocity provides enough kinetic cover to allow a 6-inch movement, or if they must settle for a 1-inch micro-movement and risk running out of time. The psychological burden of this calculation is immensely heavy. When a candidate has been baking inside a ghillie suit for 3 hours, their exhausted brain naturally seeks the path of least biological resistance. The temptation to execute a rapid, aggressive crawl to shave 5 minutes off the timeline is incredibly powerful. The instructors are intimately aware of this specific psychological phenomenon, and they actively increase their optical scanning frequency during the final hour of the evaluation when candidates are most desperate. Furthermore, the environment itself is a dynamic, unpredictable adversary that actively conspires to expose the candidate. The local wildlife frequently interacts with the crawling sniper, adding an entirely new layer of psychological torture. Venomous snakes, massive spiders, and swarms of biting insects regularly seek refuge in the dense, shaded jute of the candidate's ghillie suit. The candidate is strictly forbidden from swatting at the insects or violently recoiling from a snake bite, as any sudden, reflexive physical movement will instantly trigger an optical target indicator. As the candidate closes the distance to the observation post, the optical threat increases exponentially. The angular resolution required for an instructor to detect movement is mathematically defined by optical physics, meaning the closer the candidate gets, the slower they must move. In the final 200 yards, the candidate transitions to micro-movements, advancing only a few millimeters with every single breath. The candidate must physically synchronize their forward progression with the natural oscillation of the wind blowing through the vegetation. The instructors manning the observation post utilize optical physics to ruthlessly hunt the crawling candidates. They employ high-end spotting scopes, often utilizing massive 60mm or 80mm objective lenses paired with ultra-high-definition glass. The Rayleigh criterion for angular resolution is mathematically defined as theta equals 1.22 multiplied by the wavelength of light, divided by the diameter of the aperture. In practical military terms, This means the massive objective lenses can gather enough light to visually resolve a target indicator as small as a moving twig from over 1,000 yards away. The instructors do not scan the field randomly. They divide the terrain into strict mathematical sectors and execute overlapping optical sweeps. They study the natural baseline of the environment, observing how the wind manipulates the grass and how the shadows lengthen as the sun arcs across the sky. When a candidate moves, they inevitably alter this natural baseline, creating a kinetic disturbance that breaks the visual rhythm of the field. The instructor's brain instantly registers this subtle disruption and locks their high-powered optic directly onto the anomaly. The grading rubric for this evolution is mathematically absolute and completely devoid of human empathy. When the candidate finally reaches their designated final firing position, they must meticulously carve a loophole through the brush to establish a clear line of sight. They must then load a blank cartridge into their M40 series precision rifle without making a single metallic click. The candidate fires the blank round, sending a loud acoustic signature across the field, instantly alerting the observation post to their general mathematical sector. This is the exact moment the tactical evaluation reaches its climax. The instructors in the observation post immediately lock their high-powered optics onto the specific quadrant where the acoustic signature originated. They radio a secondary instructor, known formally as the walker, who is physically standing in the field near the hidden candidate. The observation post must utilize complex verbal geometry to guide the walker directly to the candidate's hidden position. If the observation post can successfully guide the walker to within 10 feet of the candidate based purely on visual target indicators, the candidate fails the stalk. If the candidate remains completely invisible to the observation post, the walker will approach the hidden sniper and hold up a small white card featuring a single painted letter or number. The candidate must successfully read the card through their rifle scope and radio the correct identifying character back to the instructors. This strictly verifies that the candidate has established a mechanically perfect line of sight and is actively targeting the observation post. The final confirmation of the grading card requires the candidate to demonstrate absolute mastery over their own respiratory system. To clearly read a 2-inch painted letter from several hundred yards away, the candidate must completely stabilize their rifle scope. They execute a respiratory pause, exhaling the carbon dioxide from their lungs and holding their breath to eliminate the rhythmic biological rising and falling of their chest. In a state of severe dehydration and physical exhaustion, holding the breath rapidly accelerates hypoxia, causing the edges of the candidate's vision to tunnel and blur. Following the positive identification of the card, the candidate must execute a second blank fire. The observation post now knows exactly where the candidate is located, and they spend the final minutes scanning that specific patch of grass with maximum optical magnification. They are looking for the muzzle blast parting the grass or the subtle mechanical recoil of the rifle shifting the dirt. If the candidate fails to properly dampen their shooting position, the kinetic energy of the blank cartridge will displace the surrounding vegetation, resulting in an immediate visual compromise and a failing grade. When the evaluation finally concludes, the physical recovery is a slow, heavily monitored medical process. Candidates are carefully stripped of their heavy canvas suits and immediately assessed for severe heat casualties. Medical corpsmen track their core temperatures and administer vital intravenous fluids to combat the massive dehydration and prevent long-term kidney damage. The physical destruction is temporary, but the psychological architecture forged in the grass is absolutely permanent. The attrition rate for the stalk phase alone frequently eliminates over half of a scout sniper class. The military deliberately designs this failure rate because a compromised sniper team in a real combat environment represents a catastrophic strategic liability. A sniper team operates deep behind enemy lines, entirely devoid of rapid medical evacuation or heavy armored support. If a sniper lacks the patience to move slowly, or lacks the discipline to suppress their biological urge for comfort, they will be instantly detected and killed by enemy counter-sniper units. The millions of dollars spent operating the formal sniper schools are an investment in cognitive discipline, not just marksmanship. The Marine Corps understands that pulling a trigger is a simple mechanical action that any standard rifleman can master on a flat range. The true art of the sniper is the psychological capacity to endure absolute physical misery for hours just to position the rifle for a single, unobserved shot. The military uses the heat, the dehydration, and the relentless optical pressure of the stock to forge an operator who is biologically immune to impatience. Not everyone can pass this evaluation, because the human brain is evolutionarily programmed to flee from sustained physical agony. The men who earn the sniper identifier possess a highly specific neurological anomaly that allows them to completely disconnect from their own suffering. They calculate the economic value of every single movement, weighing the agonizing passage of time against the lethal risk of visual compromise. They become masters of the mathematical equation of invisibility, overriding their humanity to become a seamless, undetectable component of the terrain. If this gave you a real picture of what it actually costs to become a Marine Scout sniper, hit the like button. Drop a comment below to tell us if you could survive the thermal agony of a ghillie suit. Share this with someone who thinks being a sniper is just about having a steady hand on the trigger. They need to understand the brutal mathematics and physics of the stock.